You're going to hear something today that will save your life or confirm you've already lost it. There is one secret, one that took me 60 years to learn, and it cost me more than money. It cost me blood I thought was loyal. I will tell you that secret before this is over, but not yet. You haven't earned it yet. You're still sitting there thinking your family loves you the way you love them. So sit down, shut up, and let an old woman who has been hunted by her own children teach you how the hunt works. Last Thursday, I opened my laptop. Magnesium alloy frame, custom encrypted, paid for with money I earned, while the system told me I had no right to earn it. I opened it to review the quarterly balance of properties I bought when banks were still finding creative ways to deny black women mortgages. And there it was, a piece of software sitting in my operating system like a parasite buried in an organ. A financial tracking application installed remotely, mirroring every credit card transaction, every wire transfer, every charitable donation I make to a foundation in Atlanta that feeds scholarships to black girls who remind me of who I was at 17, starving and brilliant and invisible. My daughter put it there. Cassandra, 55 years old, the girl I carried for 9 months, the girl I nursed through pneumonia, the girl whose entire education I bankrolled from kindergarten through her mediocre HR certification. She planted surveillance software on her own mother's machine and wrapped it in the language of love. She called it Integrated Family Financial Management. She called it Transparent Connection. She called it Care. Let me tell you what it actually was. It was the first incision of a surgery designed to remove me from my own empire while I was still breathing. The deadliest lie sold to aging people, and especially to aging black people, who built wealth against a civilization designed to keep us begging, is not the phone scam, not the lottery fraud, not the stranger at the door. It is the weaponized vocabulary of therapy culture, hijacked by your own bloodline to convince you that hiding your bank balance from your children is an act of cruelty instead of an act of war. They don't come with guns anymore. They come with podcasts and acronyms and intervention scripts rehearsed in the parking lot before they walk through your front door. And if you are sitting there right now nodding, thinking this couldn't happen to you because your son is different, your daughter is kind, your grandchild respects you, you are already bleeding. You just haven't looked down yet. 3 days after I found that software, it was Sunday. Brunch, my house, my oak ceiling, my Italian marble countertops, my coffee from beans I import directly from a cooperative in Ethiopia that I personally vetted. Cassandra arrived with Tyler. Tyler is my grandson, 24 years old. I paid for his MBA, every cent, every textbook, every networking dinner, every overpriced apartment near campus so he could focus. He walked into my dining room wearing a cheap gold ring and the smirk of a boy who has confused access with achievement. And then they turned my living room into a courtroom. Tyler connected his laptop to my flat-screen television and projected a dashboard of my spending in my house. my biotechnology investments, my philanthropic donations, my longevity protocols, all cross-referenced, all color-coded, all organized into categories they had no legal, moral, or spiritual right to even glance at. Tyler twisted that ridiculous ring on his finger and told me that my consumption pattern, combined with my age, was incompatible with long-term capital preservation for family sustainability. He said it like he was reading from a textbook, because he was. The MBA I bought him taught him how to audit his own grandmother. But before I tell you exactly how I dismantled them, and I will, piece by piece, you need to understand the architecture of the trap, because what happened in my dining room was not personal. It is industrial. It is happening to you right now, and you are calling it love. The financial governance industry in this country was built on one core assumption: that wealth accumulated by black hands is temporary, accidental, and ultimately destined to be redistributed back into white-controlled systems. When a 40-year-old white man hides assets in opaque trust structures across 3 jurisdictions, the world calls him a strategist, a builder, a visionary. Magazine covers, podcast interviews. When an 80-year-old black woman locks the door to her own vault, the exact same system, backed by pop psychology and geriatric stereotyping, labels her paranoid, secretive, cognitively declining. The demand for my transparency was never about connection. It was about making my dismemberment convenient. Transparency is the Trojan horse approved by bank managers, endorsed by family therapists, and celebrated by every heir who already spent your money in their mind before your heart stopped beating. Cassandra understood this instinctively, not because she's intelligent, she is aggressively average, but because the system rewards mediocre people who collaborate with it. She didn't study finance. She studied manipulation dressed in velvet. She learned words like gaslighting and generational trauma and healthy boundaries from podcasts hosted by people who have never built anything. And she deployed those words like grenades against the woman who built everything she stands on. When Cassandra speaks, her voice is soft, measured, therapeutic. She doesn't raise it. She doesn't need to. The violence is in the vocabulary. She speaks to me not as the financial titan who assembled a real estate portfolio across 4 states while raising her alone, but as an elderly employee failing a performance review. That softness is the deadliest weapon in the modern predator's arsenal. It sounds like concern, it smells like compassion, and it will strip you naked in a boardroom before you realize you're no longer wearing clothes. If you are still watching this and you recognize Cassandra in your own home, in your daughter, your son, your nephew, your caretaker, then stop pretending you don't see it. The recognition is the first weapon I'm handing you. Take it or stay a target. 2 days after the brunch ambush, Cassandra escalated. She brought a woman to my house without warning. Dr. Evelyn Vance, 60 years old, white, a psychoanalyst with fees so astronomical they could only be justified by the destruction she delivers per hour. Cassandra had been paying her, with money I indirectly provided through the allowance I was foolish enough to maintain, to build a clinical case against me. Dr. Vance sat in my living room, crossed her legs, smiled at me with professional warmth designed in a laboratory, and suggested that my financial secrecy was a symptom. A symptom. She said my insistence on private asset management was geriatric paranoia induced by unresolved racial trauma. She took 60 years of survival instinct, sharpened against a world that wanted me dead or destitute, and she repackaged it as a mental illness. My intelligence was her diagnosis. My self-protection was her pathology. And the prescription was exposure. Open every account, share every number, let the family in so I could heal the wounds of the lineage. You hear that? Heal the wounds of the lineage. That's the phrase they use now. It used to be, you're crazy, give us the money. The words evolved. The robbery didn't. The day after Dr. Vance's little performance, Tyler made his move. He tried to log into my brokerage accounts remotely from his apartment, the apartment I pay for, using credentials he had stolen during one of his helpful visits where he set up my new tablet. He expected to see numbers. He expected access. What he found was a wall. His credentials had been revoked. His IP address had been blacklisted. My private cybersecurity firm, the one I contacted the same night I found the tracking software, while I sipped matcha tea and felt absolutely nothing because panic is a luxury I abandoned in my 30s, had already completed a full digital sweep. Every access point sealed, every log preserved, every fingerprint documented. Tyler called me screaming. He said the bank must have frozen the accounts due to suspected geriatric fraud. Even in his panic, even caught red-handed, he couldn't resist using my age as a weapon. I answered the phone in my office. I let the silence sit on the line for 10 full seconds. Then I hung up. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is the sound of a woman who has already moved her pieces and is waiting for you to realize you lost 3 moves ago. Now. Here is where I teach you what to do, because outrage without strategy is just entertainment, and I am not here to entertain you. I activated what my legal team internally calls the Total Eclipse Directive. Within 48 hours, every financial structure Cassandra and Tyler thought they understood was dissolved, not restructured. Dissolved, evaporated. The architecture of liquidity they had been surveilling became invisible. I transferred the full oversight and management of my family office, not to New York, not to any jurisdiction they could reach with a phone call or a lawyer they couldn't afford, but to a boutique legal structure in Singapore, armored, sealed, and operating under privacy statutes that would make their American subpoenas disintegrate on contact. Every American credit card linked to my name was canceled. Every one. I now operate exclusively through corporate debit cards issued under anonymous LLCs registered in jurisdictions where banking secrecy is not a preference but a constitutional principle. The paper trail they were following caught fire, and I held the match. But I was not finished. Sentimentality is a disease I cured decades ago. I sent a formal extrajudicial notification to Dr. Evelyn Vance's clinic. The document, prepared by attorneys who bill more per hour than her entire monthly revenue, outlined a multi-million-dollar lawsuit for psychological harassment of an elderly person, practiced without proper jurisdictional consent on my private property. It detailed every ethical violation she committed by entering my home uninvited and attempting to render an informal diagnosis designed to undermine my legal competency. The notification made it clear, if Dr. Vance or any associate of her practice appeared within the boundaries of my neighborhood again, the lawsuit would not be a threat, it would be a fact. She has not called since. Predators retreat when prey reveals teeth. For Cassandra and Tyler, the communication was simpler. I sent a sealed envelope to each of them. No money inside, no gift. A registered letter, witnessed and notarized, informing them that the previous inheritance policy had been permanently revoked. Gone. The document they thought guaranteed them a future they didn't build no longer exists. In its place, a new instrument, an adapted no-contest clause with a punitive escalation mechanism. Here is how it works, because I want you to write this down and hand it to your lawyer tomorrow. Any future mention, direct, indirect, whispered, texted, implied over dinner, suggested through a therapist, communicated through a third party, any mention whatsoever of the need for financial transparency will activate a penalty. 20% of the remaining inheritance share will be deducted from whoever opened their mouth, per infraction, per word. Do the math. 5 conversations about mama's money, and there is no money left for the one who couldn't keep their mouth shut. Transparency died in my house so that my non-negotiable respect could breathe. If you're done being a doormat for people who measure your love in dollar signs, type strength in the comments right now, because the rest of what I'm about to say is only for people ready to stop bleeding. Let me tell you something. The system will never print in its wellness magazines. Surviving the coordinated psychological assault of your own bloodline requires a body that refuses to collapse. When your daughter and your grandson sit across from you and attempt to strip your sovereignty with spreadsheets and fake compassion, your bloodstream floods with pro-inflammatory cytokines. Those chemicals, if you let them run unchecked, will shrink your hippocampus, the part of your brain that holds memory, strategy, spatial reasoning. They want your brain to shrink, not consciously maybe, but the system they serve needs your cognition to decline. So the narrative of, she can't handle her own affairs, becomes medically plausible. I refuse to give them that ammunition. My body is a fortress, maintained with the same discipline I apply to my finances. Cyclic caloric restriction, purified pterostilbene, trans-resveratrol. These are not cute supplements from a grocery store shelf. They are activators of sirtuin proteins, sentinel molecules that patrol my DNA and repair the telomeric degradation caused by years of proximity to emotional parasites. While Tyler destroys his prefrontal cortex with artificial energy drinks and dopamine loops from cryptocurrency charts, I oxygenate my brain with high-intensity weighted marches through the hills of Atlanta at dawn. Rucking, adapted for bone density preservation. The capillary hyperoxygenation from those climbs is what allows me to sit in a room with people trying to rob me and maintain a resting heart rate below 60 beats per minute while I reroute capital across continents. My finances are opaque. My cells are radiant. They try to age me with extortion. I age in reverse and buy myself more time. Time to ensure they never find where the treasure sleeps. Now, the secret. I told you at the beginning there was one thing that took me 60 years to learn. You've waited. You've listened. Maybe you recognized your own Cassandra. Maybe you saw your own Tyler. Maybe a Dr. Vance has already sat in your living room and told you that protecting yourself is a disease. So here it is. The secret is this. The people who demand to see inside your vault will never put anything in it. Not $1, not one sacrifice, not one sleepless night working a second job to fill it. They will only ever take. And the mechanism they use to take is the word transparency. That word is not a bridge, it is a crowbar. The moment you accept that the people who love you and the people who want your money can be the same people, the moment you stop pretending those two truths cancel each other out, you become untouchable. Love does not require access to your bank statements. Love does not demand passwords. Love does not install surveillance software and call it connection. Anyone who tells you differently is not your family. They are your audit, and you do not owe an audit your warmth. I built my empire in a country that told me my skin was a deficit, my gender was a limitation, and my age would be my undoing. I built it anyway. I built it in rooms where I was the only black face and the youngest person and the poorest person all at once. I built it through recessions that swallowed men who started with 10 times what I had. And I will never hand the keys to that empire to anyone who thinks the word family is a skeleton key that opens every lock I installed to protect myself. You have two choices right now. You can close this and go back to sharing your bank balance at Thanksgiving dinner because your son said it would bring you closer. Or you can look at your life with the same cold clarity I looked at that tracking software on my laptop last Thursday. And you can start building walls that your own blood cannot scale. Comment below and tell me the worst tactic your relatives ever used to spy on your finances under the disguise of love. Or keep leaving the door of your life wide open for looters dressed as heirs. The choice was always yours. I just made sure you can't pretend you didn't know.